All right, appreciate everybody being here tonight. If you haven't signed in on this sheet here at the front, if you don't mind to sign in, we appreciate it. Just kind of give a brief overview for the evening. We will have a public hearing at the beginning of tonight, and then we will proceed into the Planning Commission, regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting after that. So, I'd like to call the public hearing for the conditional use for the manufactured home placement on Cemetery Street. We'll call that to order here at 7:05 for the public hearing. And how we kind of approach this, we appreciate you being here tonight, but the purpose of this public hearing meeting is to obtain citizen comments and concerns on the conditional use that is being presented. Before we get started, kind of give a brief overview on how we intend for this to flow for those that aren't familiar with the process. First, we'll have a presentation of the conditional use by the applicant, and dialogue between the applicant and the Planning Commission or the public is minimal, if any, at this time. And then after the applicant presentation is completed, then we open the floor to public comment. If anybody's here that would like to comment on the conditional use, and that public comments, any concerns would be voiced at that point in time. A few rules we ask that you follow for the public comment time. If there's any speakers, we ask that you state your name and your address and confirm for us planning commissioners that you're a resident of Vilonia, because we've had kind of a pretty good cross section of folks over the past. We also ask that each speaker kind of keep their time to 2 to 3 minutes, and then we always ask that you be courteous and considerate with your language and your actions, because there can be differing opinions from time to time. After the public comment time is completed, we then offer the applicant any opportunity for closing arguments. If somebody had a comment, you come back up and kind of present your case, so to speak. And then after any closing comments, we would adjourn the public hearing, and then we'll transition into the Planning Commission meeting at that point in time. And we always say, please note that we are having a public hearing prior to the Planning Commission, so we can all hear any comments that come out of that. All right. And with that, we'll start in. Ms. Hensley, is that correct?
Yes, Jennifer Hensley.
Okay.
I have a package of my proposal. I'd like to give it to you.
Thank you.
Yes. Sorry.
And I'll just state, just kind of for the record, that we're having this public hearing as part of a conditional use because this property falls into the village square. What you're proposing is a conditional use within that village square zone, and so it requires a conditional use public hearing. So.
Yes, that's correct. Of course, we originally kind of had intended to put a conventional built home there. We got bids, and it just financially was unfeasible. The purpose of me wanting to be there, though I live Vilonia, I've lived here before, and I want to live here again, is really to be there as a caregiver's cottage for my parents. Both of my parents are in their mid-80s, and my husband is as well. So I am caring for 3 80-plus-year people. My father has some health issues that are going to continue to deteriorate, and as does my husband. So currently I live in Greenbrier, and it has become very tricky trying to manage that back and forth. I work full time as well. I'm on the cusp of retirement myself, So I really didn't want to bite off a $250,000 mortgage at my age. We looked for options. We consulted with the city, and we were told that mobile homes were, possible there. So we purchased a mobile home, and then we kind of went down a little bit of a rabbit hole and found out that we did have to do get special permission to do that. So, and we're fine with crossing all of our T's and dotting all of our I's. But that's my request, and the request is really mainly based in the need to be there to care for, offer care for my folks. It is a new home. It is an e-built home. It has extra energy efficient, extra insulation. It's the finest and the best for what I can afford, but it is energy efficient, and it is FHA and HUD approved construction. So, and it will be fully landscaped. We kind of pride ourselves in improving everywhere we are. So we enjoy gardening, and we will, of course, make it as nice as we possibly can. We want to be an improvement to the area, not a blight in the area. And I just, request your consideration in allowing us to do that.
When you say it's going to be FHA compliant, that means that it's going to be permanently fixed to the property.
Yes.
So that means that it's not going to have a towing tongue
No.
tray with all that's being removed.
Yes.
It's going to have a permanent underskirting. It's
Yes.
going to be attached to concrete runners or something of
Yes.
the sort.
Mm-hmm.
Have an engineer's report.
Yes.
And that's all part of the financing requirements as well.
Yes.
So that means that the title of the mobile home will be expunged or canceled.
Yes.
So it won't actually be considered separate
It'll be
property
correct.
anymore by the mortgage company
Right.
or by the tax assessor or by a title company.
That's correct.
It would be considered permanent structure.
Yes, ma'am.
And that means it can't ever be sold off or moved as separate property again.
Yes, ma'am.
I was right in your wheelhouse, wasn't it?
That's right. We record that.
That's what you do.
That's what I think.
That's what you do.
All right, thank you.
Yes. Thank y'all.
Is there any public comment at this time?
I'm Stanley Gordon Jr. and 1688 Highway 64.
Stanley, yeah, do you mind come up here to the mic, Stanley? I hate to vote. Do that.
And your buddy.
Sorry. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Get me on the record now. Okay. Stanley Gordon Jr., 1688 Highway 64 East is my address, and a partner of mine and I own the 20 acres to the west of it.
Okay.
While I'm not opposed to a lot of things, one of the concerns that I do have is back several years ago after the tornado hit in 2014, over 10 years ago, thank goodness. One of the things that we were approached about was would we be willing to make that the village area or anything to have that? And we were told as far as, what the restrictions are for that, and they're a lot different than what it is for other things. There was probably over 10 years ago when I was on the planning commission, I don't know when it was, there was a similar type of request made for a piece of property just north of us, south of 64, but to the north, to the east. It was going to be a temporary place to be cared for and everything, and that's still there. Now, I don't know what's going on there or what, but I know there's still that mobile home there. It's supposed to be certain things that can't be transferred to anyone else or whatever. I think I'd have to refresh my memory on it. The concern that I would have, and that Ralph Lahosky, my partner, I would have and would like to ask about is if that goes in there, And I think that was answered. It's basically a permanent structure, correct? So it's not a temporary like the other one was. So I do have some concern, about something being permanent of nature there, especially with us having the restrictions that we do place there for the village. So what I'd like to know is that if this goes in, are we going to be able to get that rezoned, or, to be able to not have to comply with the village to move it to something else? It's because again, one of the things that our understanding is that was going to be an area that we could use for that particular type of setup to be conducive to something different than Vilonia has at some point in time. We actually have been looking into doing something on it recently, and I found out that the cost to develop that is $35,340 per lot to do that. So with all the streets, the curbs and gutters, and I think with the retention pond and other things like that. The type of houses that, we were looking at doing, which we're putting on hold after finding out that it was going to be $35,340 per lot. And we're kind of waiting on that for a bit. So I guess from my question would be, from the Planning Commission standpoint, if this goes in, or will we as, and I know you can say, well, you can come and, ask to have it done, but, I'd like to know in advance, is that something that we would be able to get, concessions made if we wanted to take that out of the, that particular type of, and I'd have to go back and refresh my memory on what the qualifications are there. I just remember that they were pretty stringent, and we thought long and hard before we did that, because we knew that, the lot lines would have to be different. There were so many things that would have to be different in order to do that. Are we going to be able to have changes made to that? I was under the understanding when I got the letter, and again, that's probably my own ignorance, as far as that, it was going to be something that was going to be temporary. Because the indication I got was that it was, and like I said, probably read between the lines, and I know my 2 minutes is about up, so it's up. So I guess that's my question, since I'm limited on time. So
Appreciate your comment, and I'm sure during the commission meeting we'll probably address anything further. Ms. Hensley, do you have any? Is there any other public comment? You're more than welcome to have any final comments.
I understand that the area that the gentleman is speaking of, and I mean, all I can say is this: I need my residents to be there. If for some reason you guys stipulate it has to be temporary, I suppose I could do that, but the purpose of me being here, the purpose of me meeting the residents is to be there. So whatever you guys say I need to do, I guess that's what I'm gonna have to do, because the need for me to be there is the most important part. I think it would be better for the neighborhood. This is just my personal opinion. I think it would be better for the neighborhood if it was a permanent structure. I think it would look nicer. I think I could make it look as attractive as possible and not interfere with any future plans, or downgrade that in any way. That's all I would say. I guess how you guys end up deciding it needs to happen, we'll make it happen.
All right. We will call the public hearing. We will end that at 7:19 p.m. We will transition, everybody's good with it, into the regularly scheduled planning commission meeting for Thursday, November 21st. We'll call that to order here at 7:20 p.m. And we'll have the approval of the minutes as the first item on the agenda of the November 7th meeting. They were in your packet. I will briefly kind of summarize. Meeting was called to order at 7 p.m. by Trey White. We had a quorum present: Ryan Sims, Todd Bean, Trey White, Charles Coker, Brady, Glenn. Approval of the minutes for the September meeting. Passed. Old business, the duplex development site plan, Mr. Patrick Hagan was presenting. The Tyler Group has made the changes recommended and added documentation for drainage shown on page 5 of the packet that he submitted. Mr. Coker made a motion to approve the preliminary plat. Brady had a second. Ryan Sims abstained from the vote. And the remaining commissioners passed the preliminary plat of the duplex development. And other than that, there's a couple other comments, just more or less announcements, talking about the zoning ordinance that passed through the city council. The meeting was adjourned at 7:12 p.m. If there's any questions, please let me know. If not, I would entertain a motion to set the planning commission meeting minutes as presented.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Ron. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Brady. Any other comments this time? Not all those in favor of approving minutes as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. Minutes. The November 7th meeting passed. Okay, there is no old business, and we will transition into the new business. First item of new business is the conditional use that we just had the public hearing on at 18 Cemetery Street. Now we'll open the floor to any discussion at this time. I will offer that if you look on our zoning map, it appears that the Cemetery Street is kind of a divider on the zoning. One side, I believe, is Village Square, and the other side is the town center. But I believe this is on the Village Square side.
That's correct.
Okay. Mr. Gordon, I'm going to quiz you real quick, unless anybody else wants to jump in. But you said your property was there on the west side of this property, or just in that Village Square area. And you said, how many acres was that property, you think?
Trey, I think there's about 20,
20? Okay.
more or less.
Okay. And your concerns primarily surround, your development was going to be kind of more geared towards that Village Square concept, I guess, for multifamily or commercial or things of that nature, is kind of what you looked at in the plan. Okay. Comments? I will say that the manufactured home is a conditional use as presented in the Village Square under section 5.21 or 0.1.2. There appear to be, from what I could tell, as far as any kind of regulations, that would fall under section 5.2.1.4, which would be items 5, 6, 7, and 8 as of right now.
Trey? Am I allowed to talk right now?
You bet.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah.
Do I need to stand up or?
What do you want?
I mean,
Y'all good?
I
I mean, I can come up there, but
Yeah, I just try to do that for the public hearing standpoint, but.
Oh, okay. You know, again, I think at the time that the village square was done, there was some conceptual things that, that committees were looking at and everything. So, you know, I'm not convinced that the village square idea is you know, something that
May get traction.
yeah, I mean, you know, so I just don't want, you know, to have my hands tied
Sure.
about trying to do something because the way that if I remember correctly, looking at the village square, it's not conducive to manufactured housing surrounding it and everything, and, you know, but it's not gonna bother me if we, you know, look at changing that. I just don't want my hands tied on something that I've got to use for something that maybe not be conducive with something joining. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
You know,
Mr. Chairman, I would say, I was there when that was done, and I have to agree with Mr. Gordon that was a conceptual idea that was there to try to grab some FEMA and some EDA money, and it never materialized after the storm. And I know there's been a lot of discussion out in the public, and my opinion, I'm just one. I think Village Square needs to be modified or done away with. It's pie in the sky, and it was things that they were trying to pursue at that time. And I know there's been some of the members of the community that I've talked to, several have felt that same way. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. Right. Any thoughts?
I was on the planning commission at the time that the village square was passed. The things that have been stated by Mr. Gordon and Mr. Scroggin are part of the reason why we limited the area that was to be affected by village square, because originally when we started to discuss it, the idea from Metro Plan was that we should cover a larger area. And it was the consensus of the planning commission that we limit that more in scope, because we did also believe at that time that that was for future planning and for future conceptual ideas. Some of the things that are allowed in there, like the lower minimums for the setback lines and things like that, where you could put more houses on a lot. It didn't do away with the ability to put less houses on a lot or to have the setback be further back. So I think some of these things, like housing on this street in particular, on Cemetery Street, something like this probably goes along with the flow of what's currently on that street more, especially when we're talking about permanent housing. I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think that having it as a temporary placement where the financing is different and where the look of the house is different, I don't think that adds anything to the nature of the property. I think that it would be probably more detracting to do it that way if it was a choice between one of those or the other. That's my opinion.
Okay. Any other thoughts? I'll give my 2 cents, you know, just from the time being on here, that never would I want somebody to think that a piece of property that you own you could come to us and ask for rezoning, you know, because times change and there's different applications and different thoughts about how a piece of property. I think that obviously you kind of balance that from my standpoint of this is I'm not a professional planning person per se. I'm a volunteer, citizen volunteer on the planning commission. And so do we look to those Metro Plan people to kind of guide us? Sure. I mean, that's stuff that they do day in, day out. Look for guidance from those folks. At least I do. Right. You know, from time to time we have a question, we ask Kelly to email Brenda, right? And we talked about the UDO, and so they kind of give us guidelines, but at the same time, we have to do what's right and appropriate in those areas for property owners in the future plan. So, I don't stick my head in the sand and say, well, that's certain that rectangle there is purple, and, that's what we're gonna do, you know? So, you know, Mr. Gordon, I'm gonna ask a question from, if I'm reading you correctly, and that's, because I want to be sure and listen to the citizen property owners and stuff. You are not necessarily hard and fast in the village square. You're just trying to figure out, hey, if we had a different idea for development, would that be entertained from the planning commission, or do we think that this piece of property is going to go a different direction, or can it go a different direction? Am I reading you correctly in asking that
I
question?
think that's fair. You know,
Okay.
and I do have, and again, I'm not anti-manufactured housing or
Sure.
modular homes or anything like that. I just know that, you know, at the other end of the property, there was an exception made for that. So we got one there. Now we've got another one coming in.
Sure.
And I do have these visions in my head. Okay, the next thing you know, we're surrounded by something that wasn't intended, you know, to be there. So that, you know, so it's not that I'm against any of those things. It's a concern about what's next and where we go from there. Because again, on the other, if it was deemed to be temporary, and I guess it is temporary, but temporary, I don't know what that means.
Sure. Other thoughts?
But I also have to agree, like I've heard several people talk about Village Square. It doesn't really fit in what we have right now, and I think that could possibly be addressed when we transition, or if we transition to our version of MBO. That was all done late for me, so I don't know.
Is this planning to be on a separate lot from your parents' lot or on the same lot?
No,
Is it the neighboring lot?
it's a separate, it's its own lot. It's 18.
Okay, so is that their house behind it, or is there
So
just?
their house, their address is 20
Okay.
Cemetery Road. This house, there was a dwelling, their house there, and it was taken out by the tornado. And the lady that lived there just couldn't go back, and so my father bought that lot.
Okay.
For the record, I met with Ms. Hensler on the site and tried to help guide them through the process. The lot is tree lined, extremely tree lined with planted pine trees. And I suggested to her to keep those and even put more vegetation around if she did get approval.
Do we have anything like a plot plan showing where the house is planning to sit on the property? Like the
It's
setback
on the very
lines?
front.
Just gonna sit at the front?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know with a setback line from the street?
I would say,
So in
40 foot.
it says, you know, basically within the guidelines of Village Square, the minimum front yard setback is 25 feet if you're abutting a principal arterial, which you're not.
Right.
Right. But it says, or it's 5 feet on other streets. So that's a minimum.
Okay.
And then there's no minimum side setback.
And for conditional use, we could condition that in any way we saw fit.
If you want to. Yes, if we want.
I don't know if there's room there to set it any further back than that.
Not much in my opinion. Like I said, I just went down there to try to see it.
Is the,
It should not be visible from Mr. Gordon's property.
it what?
It
will
won't
not
be
be
at all.
visible.
No.
The home won't be visible to the
Yeah,
property
and
because
that's why I
the trees.
suggested to her and her husband to leave those trees.
What about, the prior slab that was on the property? Is it already gone or is it
No,
still there?
it's there.
Are you using that?
Yes.
For the house?
Yes, yes.
To attach to it?
So if the previous home that was there was in
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah,
so it'll be
compliance, then it should still be,
in line with
yes.
kind of, that's what I was wondering, are the other houses gonna be sitting back and then this one's gonna be right by the road?
Oh, no, ma'am.
Okay.
No, ma'am. It will
Okay.
set back exactly
Yeah.
where the previous home sat.
Okay, yeah, I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, any other comments? Anybody want to make a motion?
I think under the terms of it being FHA and it being all the underpinning and it's a fixed structure, I'll make the motion to approve the conditional use.
Okay. Any constraints on that conditional use motion?
It's, as long as it sits on that existing pad at that distance, I think that's an acceptable
That distance being wherever the pad,
existing
pad
pad.
sits.
Yes. And yeah. Per the FHA requirements of it being permanently fixed.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve the conditional use as presented, contingent that the residential structure sits on the existing slab that's on the property. Is that right? Okay. We have a motion by Ron. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Glenn. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion to approve the conditional use with the conditions as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? There are none. Conditional use passes unanimously. All right. Ms. Isley, thank you for your time.
Thank you guys very much.
All right, we will continue on with Mr. Barrier. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And talking about the laundromat at 1011 Main Street. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. And I'm going to make a couple assumptions here tonight because we got your information that was in the packet that was emailed to us. Right?
Yes, sir.
And I'm kind of going through what we have. This appears to be kind of what I would consider to be as part of our control, development control kind of document that we have out there and on the website. That this is kind of a pre-app discussion. Is that kind of what you're here for this evening?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so, and just kind of so that we're all on the same page, on the planning commission, what I'm referring to is if you look in our control of development, and you go to section 3.1, it talks about the pre-application consideration, right? And it says whenever a development plan or any subdivision or tract is proposed to be made, the subdivider or his agent may submit to the planning commission sketch plans, data concerning existing conditions within the site and its vicinity, which convey the intentions of the developers for the proposed layout type of development. And so this is something that would be kind of what I call a fact-finding mission sometimes. It's, hey, what do we have to do? And that's prior to them having to come to us with a preliminary plat or anything of that nature, site plans or any engineering drawings that we may request. So is that kind of, you're here for just kind of the pre-app process tonight. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you don't mind, will you kind of state what you're looking to do? Just, I know we got it in the packet, but just kind of for you to hear from you, kind of line up what we hear in the packet, we're seeing in the packet.
Absolutely, yes, sir. So thank you for seeing me tonight. My name is Scott Barrier. Currently, I have business at 1048 Main Street, which is the Vilonia Treasure Chest. It's the old Harps grocery store. Have the U-Haul and the flea market there. God had laid on our heart that the town really needed a laundromat facility. So I also own property at 6 Williams Road, which is right down off of Naylor, down behind the trailer park. Originally, we were trying to push to get the laundromat on that property. Due to the current zoning, it's a little hard to figure out exactly what is allowed to be where. So it says light residential, and then it goes through a whole list, but it doesn't say laundromat. There's really no list that says what can be what anywhere. So after talking with Kelly, she said, no, that won't fly there. So we looked, and mixed highway use was the area that it was approved at. So after finding the land and any zoning in Vilonia to help build Vilonia is either extremely rare or extremely expensive, we had landed at 1011 Main Street, which is in between the Hibachi Grill trailer and Bise Electric. It's 17.29 acres back in there. Now, if you look at your packet, you'll see that there's the flood zone that goes back through there. Talking with the Faulkner County OEM director, Mr. Hillman, he said that area, it is in the flood zone, but it is not at the beginning of it. It's at the very beginning edge of the flood zone. So that area hasn't flooded, but it is in desperate need of cleaning up. The proposed spot that I have, if you look, is right on the highway, which is mixed highway use, and it is not in the flood zone whatsoever. It's out of there. There's no close neighbors besides the Hibachi trailer, which is roughly 5 acres away from the proposed area. It does have city sewer, city sewage, and gas all on the property, and that's what we plan on using. Now, on plumbing for a laundromat, they asked for a lint trap, which is basically kind of a septic tank type system. However, in our plans, if you look at those technical plans in there, it has a lint trap built into the foundation itself. So all of that is caught well before it gets into any city sewer. So our plan is to use the city water at that spot if approved, and we have other plans on at the back of the property, eventually putting our house back there and moving our flea market into that same property too. I wasn't sure, I didn't think y'all really wanted the demographic reports, but I do have the demographics if that's something that you need.
So there's nothing that we can approve at this time. We can tell you that, at least, I'm gonna talk to you here in just a little bit, and y'all can jump in and say, if you have things something different, but we can tell you, yes, this type of business would be allowed in this zoning.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
No problem with that. You know, what we would be looking for is if you go to the next step in your development, you'll need to go to a civil engineer and get engineered plans for the site. And then you would submit those. And that's part of the actual preliminary plat process. And if we go to the control of development document, there's this chart that's in there. And it's also on our website, but you'll see it, and it looks like this.
Yes, sir.
Okay? And it kind of lists all the requirements that you have to have before we can approve anything.
Yes, sir.
From that standpoint. And so, you know, that's goes into those preliminary plat. So we kind of go back to that development control document. You know, that's kind of, you're at the pre-app process, and then the next one would be the application for the preliminary plat or development plan, kind of site plan approval.
Yes, sir.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, good. So we're on the same. Y'all kind of agree with what I'm saying there from that standpoint? Yeah. Right. All right. So at this time, we can basically say, if you want to proceed on with, you're, acquiring some plans, from an engineering firm, then you can bring those back to us, and then we can try to review those for approval at that point in time.
Yes, sir. So as far as the engineered plans, the technical plans for the laundromat, it was a little hard for me to understand when I was looking into hiring a lawyer, somebody to decipher all of that for me, because it wasn't made for somebody at my level to understand. But for the engineered plans, what exactly is that referring to, the engineered plans?
Okay, right. So
For the building itself, and the parking. For the building itself, the parking, the layout, the driveways. things
So-
like that.
So
Parking,
Do you have to have the, like the duplex drawings? I didn't bring mine with me.
So, kind of the process, how that works is the civil engineering group will help kind of walk you through this process.
to meet those requirements.
Thank you, sir.
So one thing that happens is, when you go to a civil engineer, civil engineers, they'll have like, they actually apply their license to do that, and then they'll provide, like, they'll give us a site plan that has some criteria, has a parking, that has all the boundaries, because when you go through this chart, right, that's all that part. When you go through this chart, people ask you to do quite a few things, street names, it goes all, like, all adjacent properties, things of that nature, and then they'll actually get down in here, and there'll be a holographic map, and there'll also be a certain we do that, so that, in each year, it's actually looking at the calculations for what kind of runoff is going on. They do all those calculations, and basically, they change the same county. And so they do us sometimes they want to go and show where they'll build it, utilities that they want to build the structure, things of that nature. So we review that as part of it. And this is what we have to want to apply, is that right? So, this is a 11 sheets. Sometimes we'll come in. Maybe 24, sometimes we'll do 24, 6, or part sheets as far as that goes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Cool.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So that's what we would be looking for, bringing down the approval process.
Okay. So that would be the next step, is the actual engineering plans.
Yes.
As far as the zoning and everything, we are good for the zoning. Mixed highway use is good for.
Yeah, and we see folks from time to time that they'll come in here and they'll say, hey, we're looking to build this here. Are you okay with that? And
Yes.
before you go out there and spend money on with
$1 million, yes, sir. Yeah, before I dump $1 million, then I want to make sure that everything's
Right.
going the right way.
And they'll help, and the civil engineer will help you walk through a lot of these requirements.
Yes, sir.
As far as control, because there's quite a bit of stuff that goes on.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Hey, you bet. Look. All right. Any other discussion for the evening? Any other announcements at this point in time?
Do we have any update from Trey about?
I did not call him before this meeting. I talked to him before the November 7th meeting, but I did not call him before this meeting. So I do need to, and see where he's at with that. That's my fault.
All right, start cheating.
What?
Said not trying to start cheating.
No, all right. Honestly, I think it's one of those things that we'll have to, continue to check that process through. And I think this is a good discussion tonight, talking about different governments and how we can approach them. All right. Any other comments? None? We will adjourn 7:48 p.m. Thank you.